It's time to dad.
What's up, everybody? This is Joe at Time to Dad. We're here with Chris, Nick, and Luke. And, we have a few different topics today that we really wanted to cover and knock out of the park. I was talking at work the other day. We were talking about role models. And one of the topics we wanted to really touch on today was, growing up, we all had role models in life. Sometimes it was your dad, sometimes it wasn't, but one of the things you always hear as a dad, and I think why a big part of, right, maybe Nick, why you wanted to start kind of the podcast was I know your dad was a big role model in your life. And, we want to make sure that we are that for our kids. Is that like a topic of conversation when you guys are kind of maybe hanging out with, friends, family, maybe being your kid's number one role model, is that something that kind of has come up in conversations, especially for, you guys all have older children than I do. So, my kid doesn't talk back to me the same way yours do. But have you guys came across that in your travels of being a dad?
I mean, I don't know that it comes up in like general conversation. I feel like it should. But being a dad, I think I tend to notice when I'll catch another dad out in public doing something and I'm like, yeah, like damn straight. Like that's the way it should be done. When I see a dad doing like some awesome dadding, I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but I think it should be something that's talked about more. I know it's something that's always in the back of my mind whenever I'm doing something. If I smashed the shit, I was building I talked to you guys about my new kayak, and I was building a kind of a lean-to structure off the side of my shed to keep it in and weather protected. So I smashed the shit out of my finger, and my son's right there looking at me, and I don't know why, but the first thing that came to mind was like, don't yell a bunch of curse words with your kid right beside you. And so I kind of played it off, and my fingers, like, it was bleeding everywhere because I actually smashed it into the joist hanger I was trying to put up. And I kind of turned it into this like, yeah, dad busted the hell out of his finger. Like, you want to see how cool this looks? And I show it to him, and he's looking at the blood dripping off, and he's like, is your finger going to come off? And I'm like, no, it's fine.
Cool.
Like, it hurts, but yeah, I was like, we're okay. And so I took him inside, and we grabbed my med kit that we take fishing, and he helped me put the Band-Aid on and stuff like that. So I would say at least in my circle of friends and coworkers and stuff, I don't think it comes up a lot, but it's always in the back of my mind whenever I'm doing something. And I definitely think it's a topic that should come up more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having older kids now, I can see the things that we do as dads, they will very likely emulate over time, right? They're going to pick up on those behaviors. And, it's something that I think, even when I wasn't cognizant, I never really thought of, being a role model, especially when I was younger, right? It just didn't enter my mind is that you got to be a role model for your kids. It was always, I got to do the right things for my kids, right? It didn't really think in terms of role modeling, but as they got older, I guess, I did start spending more time consciously talking to them about, having goals for themselves and, what do they do to have to achieve those goals and expecting more of themselves than they expect of others and things like that, right? I guess where that was more conscious discussion, but you're not going to do that with a 4-year-old, right? That's sure. When that comes later.
No, but
I can, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can still remember, though, to this day, there was a point when my dad, he smashed his thumb with a hammer one day. I don't remember how old I was really young, but he never cussed around me. And I didn't really think about anything about it, pro or con, didn't, at that age. But one time he smashed his thumb, and I walk in, and he starts to say, and he sees me, and he goes, "Hockey darn," he didn't cuss, but he said the most random, weird thing I could have ever imagined him to have said. But that always stuck with me because he really, and both my parents really worked hard. They really, as far as not doing things like that, not that it really matters at the end of the day. I mean, my oldest teenager now cusses like a sailor, and doesn't bother me. But I try not to cuss around them still to this day.
That's awesome. there's just your stories reminded me of the one scene in one of the Toy Story movies where they're in the RV and they get a flat or something, and you see the dad like, and you hear the mom, okay, honey, Daddy's gonna say some words now.
Yeah.
Your muffs.
Yeah, I've let a few slip, and I'm like, he's at the age now where if it's a word he doesn't know, he'll repeat it, and he'll definitely ask what the hell it means.
I'm good at keeping cuss words.
You are good or not good?
No, I'm better than what I was.
Okay.
But I cuss like a sailor. I try.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ditto.
I do when I'm by myself.
I get all my cuss words out on this show.
Yeah.
I was talking when my wife was driving, and I called her, and so she put me on speaker on the Bluetooth, whatever, and she had to give me some bad news about something. She said something, and I was like, "Oh fuck, man!" And I just hear my son in the back, "Daddy, don't say fuck."
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. He's gonna start.
No, and then
He's
you
gonna
got a
start
smug
saying that.
because anytime he's like, he knew we couldn't shout at him, and that's when I was like, okay, I need to dial this in for a little bit to get him understand the difference.
I had a similar one where I was driving, and I think my oldest was maybe 6 or something like that, maybe 5, and somebody cut me off, and I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" You know, just talking to the driver. They couldn't hear me or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then I realized, I look in the mirror and I see my son back there, and I'm like, "Oh, wait for it." And he didn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, and I thought I got away with it. And all of a sudden, this little 5-year-old, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he's waving his hands and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh, okay."
We don't say that word.
Yeah. That was the discussion.
Yeah, then they don't know which word you're talking about, but the other one sounds funnier, so they're just going to repeat that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't came across that yet. I mean, my son, he talks a lot for, a 2-year-old. I mean, he puts together, we had somebody the other day that, they're like, "Oh, what is he, like 3 or 4?" And we're like, "No, he just turned 2. But he hasn't repeated like certain words like that, like right away. Like, I mean, none of us, I'm sure it'll eventually start happening. We don't curse a lot at all. We definitely don't curse a lot. My parents never cursed growing up. I still don't know if I've ever heard either of them curse to this day. Especially, definitely not my mother. My father, maybe, like if he was doing something outside, I'm sure, right, if he hit his finger with a hammer or something like that, maybe he would have, but I don't remember it. But I always try to make sure, like, I always say the word shut instead of close. And my wife is trying to get me to kind of not say that, because obviously we know a kid, the way they're going to say shut is going to sound like that. And, and it could be just a casual thing. So, like, that's something that we're working on, to change that. But yeah.
Our boy twin can't say L's, and see the clock. And he look cock.
Oh, God.
That's it. So it's the clock.
My cousin's name is Reed, and for the longest time I could not pronounce R's, so I just ran around calling him Weed all the time. Weed. Everywhere we went, weed. Yeah.
I love weed.
Yeah. Little kids are funny like that. But I'll tell you what, if they do hear you curse and they decide to use it, I guarantee you they'll use the curse word in the right context.
Yeah.
It's like in Chris's situation where his kid yelled out because he was yelling at son. They'll yell that same word when you're driving and you won't say it, but they'll pipe in from behind you and say it. And you're like, well, I can't be pissed because they used "God damn it" right in this situation. But they'll sneak it. You'll think you got away with it, and then it'll come out in some weird opportunity, and you're like, yeah, almost got away with it. That's funny.
Did I ever tell you guys the crab story? Did I ever tell you? Does that ring a bell?
No.
All right, so I'll tell you this real quick. So when my kids were young, and I'd take them shopping with me, and I took them kind of everywhere, and we'd go to the store and go grocery shopping and stuff. And my youngest, we'd go to through the deli area where they sell, steaks and fish and crab and stuff like that. And I don't know why it just came to me. One day he asked for crab, and I said, and I just thought, oh, this is too great. I got to try to set him up. And so I would tell him, no, mommy has crabs. We don't need crab. We don't need any crab. And so it took 2 years of me doing this and taking him to the store. And finally, we were at the counter one day with my wife, and the butcher, she was asking about something, and the butcher said, well, we've got these nice crabs. And my youngest son blurted out, no, mommy has crabs. And I was just like, it was like a 2-year payoff. Yeah.
Oh,
It was
shit.
forever.
My wife. I would not
that.
leave the grocery store alive.
That's awesome.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned crabs in the grocery store. I think it's that brought back a memory. I think one of the best things of going to the grocery store when I was a kid was they still had the live lobster tanks in stores, and so we'd go through and get lunch meat and veggies and all that shit. And then kind of my reward for going in the store is mom and dad would take me by. Yeah, mom and dad would take me by the tank where they had the live lobsters, and I'd just get all googly eyed at them for 5 minutes before we finished shopping. I just thought that was the best thing in the world, was looking in the lobster tank.
We just went to Red Lobster, I think last week. Yeah, we were like, let's just go to Red Lobster. Maybe they have those big tanks, and my son was just so fascinated by it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
I mean,
but
when was the last time you get, as a kid, when do you get face to face with a lobster like that? And
you do when so we spent shit.
Yeah, you might.
No, we went up to the friggin' Baltimore National Aquarium. $50 a ticket. Luckily, Emerson was free, because four and under is free. He's still 4. All that kid wanted to see was the goddamn jellyfish exhibit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
sharks, biggest shark he's ever seen. 10-foot, 12-foot sharks in tanks, all kinds of awesome looking fish. The only thing he wanted to see were the damn jellyfish. I mean, we went by every tank, and he'd look in and he'd be like, meh. All right, I want to. Oh, and the escalators. He loved. They have so many escalators in there because the floors are kind of weirdly offset. And he loved. I mean, he wanted to rush through the exhibits just to get to the escalator.
Is it Button Aggressive Aquarium?
Yeah, it's the national aquarium for the whole U.S.
Okay.
It's a really nice aquarium. Maybe not for a toddler. We thought he'd freaking love it, but he didn't like anything but the jellyfish and the gift shop. But yeah, he. I mean, there were some cool fish. He'd stop and look and be like, eh. And the second we finally got to the jellyfish exhibit, he went batshit crazy over the jellyfish. So, but yeah, that's a kid. My wife was she was like, this is going to be awesome. He's going to love it, because he really liked the aquarium at the Outer Banks, and it's a way smaller aquarium. But he really liked that, so she was like, oh, he's going to love this aquarium. And he had a rough go of it until he saw the jellyfish, and then he was happy for the last 30 minutes of our walk through.
It's always the things you think they're going to get super excited for, right? It's like the Christmas present, and then they're playing with the cardboard box, right? Or, we took our son to it was a car show. It's because he's obsessed with cars. Obsessed with them, every little thing about them. And I don't know how it started from when he was 6 months. He was looking at the wheels of cars, and to this day he still is. So we were all right. I saw a car show. I was driving, and I was like, it's a car show 10 minutes away. Let's go check it out. We get there, and he's just sitting there, all right, zero interest, all these fast cars. I even made sure I had a yellow Corvette that he has, this little Matchbox one that was, because I saw one there that would be similar, thinking hey, this is yours, and just didn't care at all.
Yeah. That's funny.
And I was like, come on, this is, I thought you were gonna love it, and until they started all leaving, and then he's like, oh, fast car, like Benjamin's car. I'm like, all right. Yeah, now that they left and can't talk to anybody. But
yeah, I struggle with spending good money on stuff like that too, because I wanted him to have a blast, and my wife to have a personal win that she found something awesome for him to do. But in the back of my mind, I was like, this is not going to go according to plan. So I struggle with dumping money on stuff like that, where I don't know. I just have this feeling that he's not young enough, or he's not going to be in tune with what's going on, or that it's something so special that I want to wait until he's old enough to like truly enjoy and remember and appreciate it. But yeah, I struggle with stuff like that of trying to like, is this right for him now or do we wait? Because I mean, we've talked about, you know, taking him to theme parks. Disney World's always something where people want to go. And so that's kind of like our struggle is trying to figure out if he's old enough for it. Like, is it worth it to do it now?
Yeah.
Is it just going to be a fight the whole time because it's too much walking for him? Like all that stuff factors into like what we try and do. But
I feel like,
I mean, that's why I take him fishing. Fishing seems to be, he seems to like that, even though he has a short attention span with it. But he'll go to the picnic table right beside us and start dumping the worms out on the table and playing with them when he gets bored. And then I still get to fish. So it's kind of a win-win. But I try to find, you know, stuff like that where he has multiple options of what he's doing. Yeah. So if he does get bored. But yeah, sorry to cut you off, Luke.
No, you're good. Well, just the attention is all over the show. Everyone's going to say no.
Yeah, see.
You like to jump on picnic tables too.
They'll come back.
Yeah.
Well,
you like playing with worms on picnic tables?
Not anymore.
Well, one of the things
he'll pick them up. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, about the jellyfish, right? What's funny is that as they get older, you start realizing even though that was the only thing he might have mentioned, he might not, that might have been much bigger to him than you realize, and he may end up bringing it up years down the road, right? And talking about it, and you realize, wow, okay, that was actually a special thing for him, right? But it's surprising as they get older, these things that you think, well, he didn't really seem to like that. I'll still have the kids. They'll mention something that we did with them 10 years ago, you know, that you just didn't even think it registered, and it totally did. But it's just weird how that evolves.
Our oldest has got a crazy memory for shit like that. Like, he'll talk about something that happened when he was like 1.5 years old or 2 years old. He's like, remember that time when you did this? I'm like, how? No, I don't remember that. And then it triggers the memory. I'm like, shit, he's right. Like, I don't know how he does that.
Yeah, I get that's one thing I think is very interesting. Like when like does the memory kind of start coming in for stuff like that? Like obviously like traumatic things, right, cause memories and stuff like that, and things like that. Like I remember like the first vivid memory I have when I was a young kid, as my grandfather and his neighbor were like working on something. They were like building a pond and things like that, and I thought I was like 5 because I remember it so clear. So I thought I was like 4 or 5 years old, but my mother said I was like maybe 2, maybe not even 2. And they had a blowtorch, and somebody left it on, and I was, you know, baby 2 years old. But I remember thinking it was water, and I went over to it and I stuck my hand in front of it, and I got burnt, obviously. And then my aunt like picked me up and like threw my hand in a pool that they had in the pool in the backyard because my fingers started to it melted and they were webbing together. So I had to go into the kitchen. They like spread my fingers apart, and I remember
you held it in there for a hot minute, then, didn't you?
It's a blowtorch. I mean, you put your hand in front of it, bring it out, you know, but I remember that so vividly, and I thought I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I remember like sharing that with them. They were like, "No, I don't even think you were 2, right?"
Yeah.
But like then there's other things I have zero memory of when I was like 10, 9, 8. They're like, "You don't remember that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I don't remember that." They're like, "How do you remember that?" I'm like, "I don't know."
I don't remember most of my childhood, I reckon. And like from 16, maybe I started remembering stuff. And then random flashbacks, stuff like, oh shit, it did happen.
Yeah, I can't recall things like if you were to say what was the best thing about such and such ages or whatever, I don't think I could recall it. But stuff comes back to me randomly. Like when we're talking about shit, for some reason somebody will say something and I'm like, whoa, like forgot about that, and I'll remember it. But yeah, I mean, typically I don't remember a whole lot. I know they've done a bunch of there's a bunch of like studies on when you really start developing a long-term memory, and I don't remember what the exact age is, but then you'll talk to somebody else and like what you just said, and they'll remember something that I know for sure is outside of when your long-term memory is really developed. So I don't know how much weight you can put on those kind of things. But it's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Mine seem to remember, both of them seem to have memories that they're just a few memories or one or two memories between like 2 and 3. And then it's like, seems to get really build like between 5 and 6 or something like that, where they've got much more memories that come up that they'll mention.
My oldest son is visiting for a week or two at the moment, and he was saying he had random memories of some incident with 2 of my ex-girlfriends. But one of them would have been when he must have been about 4 years old. He's having random like flashback memories of something that happened. It's
Wow.
like, and he's 26 now, so it's like 22 years later. He's still.
So it's like you're telling him, no, don't repeat that out loud, please.
Well, I'll be
Repeat that
trying
out
to he's bringing her up. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. That's not helpful, man. That's bad bro code.
loud. Shut up. What did I teach you? Go to your room.
Well, I was gonna say, kind of. I mean, not necessarily being a role model along those lines, but along the lines of teaching your kids and your kids learning for you something. I don't know if I just do it like subconsciously or it seems to be when I'm like kind of worn down and I'm just in my own head thinking about random nonsense, but I'll catch myself like kind of looking down the road and trying to paint a mental picture of, you know, how am I going to teach Emerson, you know, the difference between winning and losing and how to be good at both of those, or, you know, how am I going to teach Emerson kind of the Southern culture of being a gentleman, you know, holding the doors, yes ma'am, no ma'am, things like that. So I've caught myself a couple times kind of daydreaming and trying to, because I feel like if I don't kind of decide how it needs to happen up front, that it's going to catch me off guard and I'm not going to, you know what I mean? It's not going to come across the way I want it to come across if I don't.
I think it should be an ongoing thing, though. It's never going to be like a couple lessons here and there.
Right.
I'm like stickler for manners. Like say your please and thank yous. It's how I was raised. It's how I want my kids to be. And I mean, my oldest just 6 and 7. It's still, I beg your pardon? You know, please and thank you. So
yeah, you guys say the P word.
Yeah, until it gets habitual. And then, like I saw today, my boys were sitting on 2 stools, and the one guy, he got up, and my wife sat down, and he came back and said, hey, that's my chair. I was like, no, my boy, gentlemen, give up the seats for ladies, and trying to sort of explain to him. But he's 7. You know, so I know it's going to have to be repeated multiple times before it actually becomes part of his identity. So I think it's just a case of consistency over the years. And then also leading by example so they can see you doing it.
Exactly.
I think that's why I drifted off to that topic from role modeling. Is it is kind of backwards compatible with that same thing, because you do more teaching than you know by being, you know, a role model for someone. And Luke, I think you said you work with like a boys and girls home or something like that a lot. So yeah. And and to kind of compliment what you said, it's going to come up multiple times, right? And I guess in my mind, I'm just trying to kind of give myself a mental bar graph of how I want that progression to happen.
Right.
But like you said, it's kind of inevitable. Even if I plan for that, it'll catch me off guard.
Well, the quickest way they'll learn is by watching you, because they are always watching and listening to everything we say.
Always.
And I think they get on if like, because we all make mistakes, right? We're never perfect role models, and at least in my experience, if the times when I have talked to them and acknowledged that I made a mistake, and I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done this differently, or whatever, that helps a lot versus just trying to pretend they didn't notice or they didn't see, like when I make a mistake, right? Because they see that, right? And that they'll pick up on that as well. And so those are opportunities. If I'm not always great at it, but if I recognize that I did something or I demonstrated something that I probably shouldn't have for them, having that discussion, especially as they get older, is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, some certain things they're not going to understand, right? Like
Yeah.
why you did this and why you didn't do that, even when we explain it. But years down the
Yeah.
road, they're going to kind of understand that stuff. Like, it's kind of like when, right? And again, like if your dad was your role model growing up, and then like I know when we were young, like the role model in our family happened to be like my grandfather, my mother's father. Like that was like every cousin, every uncle, everybody wanted to be like him, and it was kind of sad because nobody was like, oh yeah, I want to be like my dad in our families. It was like, no, everybody wanted to be like Pop. Everybody wanted to be like Pop. But now as we're older and I see that stuff, it's like, well, no, it's like, like a lot of the things that I got was from my dad. But when I was a kid, we didn't see that stuff. Right. So It wasn't the stuff that my dad said. It was the stuff that my dad did that we watched, not even knowing we were watching all those years, like the not cursing, like the working and providing and doing this and never complaining about it. And never fighting with, like my mother and stuff like that growing up. It was all those things. And, then it wasn't like, if you asked me at 8 years old, who was a role model, it was like Emmett Smith, because I was a Dallas Cowboys fan. Right there, right?
I liked Emmett. I hated Cowboys, but I liked Emmett back in the day.
Yeah. and then it was my grandpa. But like now, yeah, it's it's my father in that role, and I think that's something that we can kind of emulate and do as well. Even like you said, Chris, they explain something, they might not understand it now, but as they're older, they're like, oh, that thing that Dad told me 7 years ago that I said he was an idiot for. Yeah, I get it now. I'm going to teach my kid that same thing.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an interesting point, because now that you mention it, my dad wasn't a talker. Like we didn't have a bunch of heart to hearts about how life is and how things should go. And so as you were kind of saying that, I'm kind of realizing like, no shit, like a lot of my habits and my tendencies are things that I just witnessed my dad doing. It wasn't, necessarily things that we talked. I mean, we talked about certain things, but it was definitely a lot more actions observed than it was actual conversations around those actions or why he was even doing it. So I think that's probably why I never even question it. If Dad's doing it, it must be right. And so you just kind of gravitate towards those things or catch yourself doing similar things. That's a good point and way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys find yourselves teaching your kids the same things that your dad was teaching you, or sometimes maybe making sure that you're not doing the same
I think when
things?
it comes to integrity and being a man of your word, I definitely am. For my fault, he follows integrity really well and wouldn't do anything underhanded to anyone. If he found the wallet on the floor, he would hand it in with all the money and that kind of thing. So it's a lame example. But just trying to always teach them to do the right thing.
I was going to say, I think Emerson's not quite to where I can really start teaching him life lessons. But the biggest thing I've caught myself trying to work on is he has a tendency, and every kid has this tendency, is to, you ask them to do something and they can't, or, something's too, he dropped something on the floor. He dropped his water on the floor when he was eating the other night. He dropped his sip cup, and he immediately started whining that he dropped it. And I'm like, okay, we'll pick it up. And he's all, I can't. And so I've been trying to really work on, stop saying you can't. You need to at least attempt whatever you're saying you can't do. And I forget what else it was. Oh, he wanted to carry something. He said, but I can't help you carry it. It's too heavy. And, it was when I was moving the kayak over to the rack. And I knew, he was going to try and carry the thing. And so I said, well, come here and see if you can lift it. And he couldn't lift it, obviously. And so I went over there and I said, okay, well, now what do you do? And he said, well, I need help. And I said, okay, so I'll help you. So I've been trying to work with him on not immediately jumping to a I can't situation, and at least attempt whatever it is he thinks he can't do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't want him jumping off the kitchen counter or some shit like that. But things that are healthy and safe for him, to make sure that he he actually tries it and doesn't immediately just go to asking for help, but also, making sure he knows it's okay to ask for help, because I think in our day and age with mental health, what it is, and how that's kind of in and of itself, its own pandemic that's coming to light, not just teaching him to do whatever and be able to do it, but also not to be afraid to ask for help when you actually have tried and have failed or just can't do it.
One
So
direction.
that's been my kind of sticking point recently of what I've been trying to work on with him.
Yeah, my youngest had a similar. Well, it was an aversion to failure, right? I mean, I think that for whatever reason that he had, and so it would very quickly manifest from, oh, sure, I can do that, and then as soon as there'd be a little bit of difficulty, he'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it, because it was just we don't want to fail, right? And that was a real challenge for both my ex and I, was trying to work through that and trying to help him understand that it's okay to not be the best at everything the first time you try it, because you're going to eventually, no matter how good you are, you're going to find something that you just can't do very well, or you can't do at all, right? And that's just part of life. And we struggled initially with giving him the tools to cope with that and to understand it, right? And we talked about it before, that wrestling was a huge thing for him, because he couldn't blame anybody else. He could only blame himself. And that was just such a huge life lesson that taught him to deal with losing, right? And use it to do better, rather than this wall that you can't get past, and that was a real struggle. Sure.
And do you find that, like, because a lot of times, like, we're talking about it as, we're the ones maybe teaching and training in that essence of it, right? And the kids are coming to you for that. But, like, did they come, like, you had 2 sons, Chris, right? Like, did they come to your ex-wife for that? Did they come to you, right? And, like, because today's definitely different than, I guess you could say it was 20 years ago with, stereotypical roles and things like that. But I feel like whenever you see in the movies, or used to see in the movies, right, if there was ever an issue and a kid was failing, it was all right. No, it was the hard ass dad that would be like, oh, well, this is what you do, right? And like, did you both do that? Was it one of you? And
I would say we both did, but we both approached it, I think, from different ways, right? It wasn't that one of us was right or wrong as we would try to address it, but we have always been pretty engaged, in what our kids are doing in school and all that stuff. And so usually, if one of them was struggling with something, maybe one would talk to them, or the other one would, or if we couldn't figure it out, then we both would. We kind of really did parent that, kind of as a team that way. It wasn't like I was the disciplinarian and she wasn't. She was the softie. That's because how it was like in my family growing up, right? My mom was the softie and my dad was more of the disciplinarian, right? That's a pretty common, I think, thing, but for us, I don't think that was the case. In fact, I might have been a little easier on them than my ex was, So, but no, I think it was very much a team thing.
Yeah. I think it comes down sometimes to the topic too, like in certain things.
Yeah.
Like I know, like every time if I did good on a test, I showed my mom. If I failed and had to get it signed, I brought it to my dad. Right? And it was it was like,
You're not wrong.
It was 57 out of 60. You just need to sign it, and they just wanted to see, whatever it was. But then if it came to, I don't know, something else, maybe it was sports or something, then maybe it was, talking to my dad about it and things like that. And he wasn't that big into all the sports that we played, because he wrestled when he was young, but we played soccer and basketball, which he wasn't too crazy about. But I think that kind of sometimes dictates too, like, what topic is it, what subject is it, of where maybe the kids are going. That was just my instance. I know every time I got a good grade, I wanted to show mom. Every time I got a bad grade, I didn't want to show mom. I'll show dad. He'll sign it anyway without really looking.
I definitely fall under, well, my wife and I fall under the, like you were saying, Chris, where the mom is the loving, caring, nurturing, kind of softer side of our family. And then I'm the disciplinarian, the get up, dust it off, let me take a look, let's, slap a Band-Aid on it and get back out there kind So kind of the stereotypical setup, I think.
Yeah, same in our home.
No, so we're all kind of, it's the same in that aspect of it. I mean, is that what you guys see out and about most of the time? I mean, I don't know. I
It's
feel like
situational, I
Kids need
think.
more discipline in their life out and about.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, we're never the Karens in public, but we definitely see some parents who's we're just like, damn, like reel them in, you know?
Yeah, my kids who's out in public, and I have no problem reading them and making a scene. Others are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm so sorry, honey." It's like, what?
Yeah, why are you apologizing to your kid who's throwing shit across the store because you won't buy him a toy?
No, it's not.
Yeah,
That
my
drives
wife
me
tells me stuff
bonkers.
like that all the time. Like she goes to the park with our son all the time. She'll be like, "You won't believe like this mother was doing," and it'll be like, and it's usually like, the mother saw their kid throwing something at another kid, and then just pretended and started walking the other way instead of dealing with it. They just pretended that they were.
Dude,
they didn't see it.
Mom groups are freaking brutal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, the level
You're not
of
supposed to
mom
go in those
judgment.
and
I
just
don't, but my wife just vents about the like. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, but it is like they're in the Coliseum, like duking it out. Like they take it to this crazy friggin' personal level on like judging other like, oh my God, like you put your kid in that car seat because somebody can't afford, the $400 Graco car seat. They're like, I wouldn't put my kid in that. And here's this mom, like single mom struggling, like, well, that's the only shit I could afford and my kid's safe. So fuck off, right?
Yeah.
But they just, I mean, it is like nails out, pulling hair, stabbing each other with high heel. I mean, it is the stuff I hear from her. I'm like, holy shit. Like we get applauded when our kids do crazy shit and a dad posts about it. They're like, right on. Like your kid's a friggin' daredevil. But if you tell somebody your kid jumped down the stairs in the mom group, you'll get your eyes clawed out. It's so ridiculous. And if that's not like stereotypical, like male female roles in a household, I don't know what the hell else is, but it's crazy.
It doesn't just stop there though. Like I've just heard some of the conversations are pretty graphic, and they don't hold back in talking about their experiences.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of experiences are we talking about?
Oh,
all of them probably.
Yeah, all of them.
Well,
that's in the uncensored dad group.
Yeah. I remember my wife was talking about a lot when she was like in a breastfeeding mother group thing. And it was like, there was like some mothers like that were just, like ripping people apart because they switched their kid to formula and they were, I couldn't produce, and they're like, figure it out. And it's like, and it was like back and forth. And I remember her going through that and, and I, for months, because we tried that, and there was like 4 months of trying to figure out, because my wife wanted to breastfeed and she was doing it, and whatever was going on, it was definitely causing issues. We went to multiple GI doctors trying to figure out, like, he was just like always kind of like in pain in the mornings, not in the morning, like all day except at night. And she stopped eating dairy, then she stopped eating soy, then she stopped eating corn, then she stopped eating something else. She was basically eating like an egg in the morning and like chicken and lettuce for like the last month. And then eventually, and we tried like 8 different formulas. And we found like one formula. It was like a ready to feed already, not a powder form. And within like 2 hours, everything changed for him. But she and I remember her like still like almost feeling guilty because of the mom groups that they were like, oh, you shouldn't be, you got to breastfeed.
Yeah. No, I had to tell my wife ask her to get off social media when she first fell pregnant because of all the backseat parenting going on. And it's like everyone telling her to do this, do that, and they're all opposites and conflicting. And it's like, honey, stop! Like, just get off that shit. Do what works for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
It's
some of the it's like cool. It's cool when dads post those questions and they get like legit answers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things that work. But you read some of the replies and it's just I hate it when somebody comes in bullheaded and they're like, "No, this is the only way to do it." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Look, dude, there's like 30,000 dads in this group. I guarantee you they do not all do it that way and their kids are alive and breathing and healthy.
Yeah.
Calm your fucking tits, right?"
big time.
But
And there's
I
cultural
mean, every
differences.
group has that.
And there's cultural differences. What's good in one country is good in
True.
different
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't say what I have to do versus what not to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's painful when I see some of the questions asked because they're just gonna like get bent 9 ways to Sunday with 8 million different and some of the advice is just flat out wrong and everybody knows it.
Yeah. I don't know.
So,
I don't see myself going onto these dad groups asking for advice from
yeah.
a bunch of people who, I don't know. I just there's got to be better ways because you don't know who's giving you that advice.
Right. Who's just trolling you and
No.
Yeah. I mean,
and who
first I go
read
to
a
dads
first
that
time
I
dad
know.
book?
Yeah, the dad books. I don't know. Like the first people I'd go to advice are people that I know personally that are dads, right? Like if I had, I mean, I guess sometimes if you don't want people to know what's going on in your life, you do that, and that's why I don't know. It's just
There's one guy came on with a big rant saying how he's come out of 2 long-term relationships, and to all the guys out there who don't, I was like, it's bullshit. It doesn't work, and it's not just basically saying don't believe anything your woman says. It's like, why would anyone listen
That's terrible.
to this guy's advice who's just said he's shitty in relationships? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. But there are people out there who will take his word as the gospel because of his life experience and not realizing his life experience isn't their life experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's what kind of makes I mean, not to put us on a pedestal, but platforms like ours make it unique because I agree with you, Luke. I don't go to Facebook and ask the almighty Facebook for advice. That's just not a good idea. I mean, certain things it is, but maybe not dad stuff. And so then what do I do if I'm not going to do that? So I'll go to Google or Bing and I'll Google it. But the most important thing is you can't just go to one source and be like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it. You need a few sources so you can get a few ideas. And then from there, you have to use your own intuition, your own thoughts, and to piece all that into a cohesive game plan for yourself. And I don't think people do that enough. I think one person, gets bullheadish and then they just kind of go down that road and never think about looking at it another way or from anyone else's point of view. And when another point of view does come up, it all of a sudden turns into a post to bash that person's point of view to where it just makes you sick kind of scrolling through it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Or just attack them personally. Like these people just get, they're just,
oh my God, dude. People,
like,
there's people, so I won't say what dad group it is, but there's dad groups where, guys have like been vulnerable, asked questions. I think a lot of these stem from questions about divorce and stuff like that, but they've legitimately reached out for help because they've said, like, I've tried to research this and I can't find shit. What are your thoughts? And guys in that group have gone and screenshotted their shit and then go and track down so-and-so's wife and send it to her and like have wrecked marriages. And I'm like, man, like I understand you need help, but like post that shit fucking anonymously or, find another avenue to search what you need. Cause there are just people out there like that are so self-centered that they get off by, telling some guy's wife that he's thinking about divorce because he just can't figure his shit out or his wife's shit out. And it's so painful, like when you hear about stuff like that.
Scary, man.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel like some people
I was gonna say
doing that though, which is the scariest part.
they what?
They always get joy out of doing that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
because they're so unhappy in their own life that
exactly.
They find joy sometimes, and right, it's kind of like Yeah. There's if you're more miserable than me, then that makes me happy type thing, right? It's kind of like, which is
Yeah, I had a
sick.
shit day, so I'm gonna make your day shitty.
Yeah.
Well, and it's unfortunate there's people out there like that they get value in themselves by pushing other people down. That's how they feel like they're propping themselves up, right? And that's just, it's terrible that those people are out there. But hopefully, we can give our kids the tools to recognize those kind of people and dismiss them, and not let those kind of people negatively impact them, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say kind of. Oh, you got some?
I was just gonna say it's sad that that's kind of where society sometimes is. That.
Keyboard warrior, right?
Keyboard warrior, big time.
The internet kind of created that beast.
Yep. Yeah, definitely has, and that's what has become. Everybody thinks they're tough, and through that,
Yeah.
I know most people that I come across would probably beat my ass, and that's okay with it. I'm okay. You never know. Like, if you're gonna, somebody meet somebody. I have a good friend. He's like a UFC fighter, and now you see him, you wouldn't think he's all that big and strong, and he'd knock most people out. But through the keyboard warriors, everybody's all tough, and everybody thinks that this and that.
Then you meet them in person, and it's like they're like polite and friendly, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What the hell? It's like high school when you run into the school bully.
Yeah.
30 years later, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I was gonna say that talking about gender role norms, it's been interesting at Emerson's daycare, because a lot of the people that pick their kids up, it's like stay-at-home moms that pick their kids up from school. So the mom drops the kid off, the mom comes to get them. And so on more than one occasion, when my mom has picked up our son, because she picks him up for the second half of the day, they've asked her, are his mother and father together? Because they think because I'm dropping him off and my mom's picking him up that we're, split. Because there's not a mom there dropping him off and picking him up. And she's like, no, they're very much together. This is just what works for their schedules. So it's so awkward.
At the daycare, if our kid is sick, they'll call my wife. If she doesn't answer, they don't call me. And I'm like,
he's too busy.
Why wouldn't you call the dad if the mom didn't answer? And my wife's terrible with the phone. Like, she doesn't answer the phone or check her email. So it's like, I'm the most responsive person in the marriage. Like, if she doesn't answer, call me. And I've told them this, and they just don't do it. And then when I went to pick him up the other day, and she gives me a notice, and she's like, please give this to your wife for me. And I look at the notice, and
I can fucking read.
It's like, what are you talking about? But it's just automatically assumed that the dad's just unreliable and incompetent, that it will just go to the mom because that's normal. And I'm like, there's dads I know, like, just good dads. When I see the drop off, there's a ton of dads in and out. So I'm like, what? At some point, this stereotype has to start shifting, because it's
gotten. I was gonna say I've gotten similar vibes to that, kind of like, oh, the mother needs this info at the doctor's office. I've gotten that, like, they give me the printout and I'm looking at it and they're like, well, we'll email it to your wife so you have it. And I'm like, but I'm holding exactly what you're gonna send to her. It blows my mind, man.
Now, is that coming from? So that's a daycare where there's a woman working at the daycare?
Yeah, it's all. Yeah, I don't think there's any male teacher or staff.
And then even at the boys' school, it's the same thing. It's automatically assumed this is for give this to your wife kind of thing. I think they've learned a little bit now. Though they seem to be a little bit more sort of Luke's actually always doing shit with them. So they're sort of getting better at it, but it's automatically assumed dad doesn't know shit automatically.
Yeah, I can't tell you how often I had women come up to me, like, in stores and like say how awesome it was that I had my kids with me at the store, and I'm like, I'm their dad. What the hell? I took my kids with me everywhere. And it was just really weird to me that was like something that they felt like they had to point out and try to, like, thank me for, being a dad. It was just, I don't know.
That's when you got to mess with them.
Giving you a break. And I'm like, Nope. No, it's
Yeah, this is normal.
That,
Yeah.
if somebody ever comes up to me and does that, I'm gonna be like, no, these aren't my kids. I just picked them up an hour ago, and just walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
just see their reaction.
It scares me when people compliment you about stuff like that, and I'm just like, what has the world come to where you can't go out with your kids somewhere by yourself?
But I think
And
that's
automatically,
testament to what the reputation of men has been. I think that we've obviously gone, maybe it was the 90s, and that's how we all ended up how we ended up. But at some point, men got this reputation, or dads got this reputation. But it's the pendulum swinging, and I see way more good dads, responsible dads, involved dads than I see of the opposite. And if anything, I see bad dads getting shunned by other dads for being a bad dad. So it's like at some point, it's
I agree,
back to a more balanced, we have parents now, not mom or dad kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So one day we'll get there.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's true. If you look back far enough, that was a stereotype, right? Like mom ran all the errands, mom looked after the kids because mom was usually stay at home.
Yeah.
So dad was busting ass, and when dad got home, it was kind of the wife's job to keep the kids out of his hair, let him relax.
That was the 50s and the 60s, man. Like,
but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, though, that really wasn't a long time ago.
No.
It seems like a long time.
I feel like it's a long time.
But
that's
really, I don't think it was.
The show Wonder Years. That was the show Wonder Years. That was like the 70s, right?
Wonder Years was. I watched that in the 90s.
Yeah, we watched it in the 90s, but it was supposed
to be
reruns.
Yeah.
70s.
Okay.
And whenever I think of like the American Family, I go back. I think of like that show, and like I go back to that. Like he went to work, he came home. If there wasn't a hot dinner on the table, he was angry. He showered. He wanted a beer and the TV for a half hour, and that was it. And then the weekends was the kids. He was with the kids. Right?
I always think of the Christmas Story when I think of like classic American Family.
Yeah, that too, right? And I mean, I guess it's tough, and it probably comes to portions of where you grow up too, right? And sometimes the absence of a father.
You talk about that. So I worked in a dive boat in the Bahamas, about a decade ago.
In the 70s?
That's forever ago.
And one of the jobs, because it was like a 65-foot sailboat with 23 guests, 6 crew, like you're slammed in there. So it's like camping at sea. And one of the duties would be vacuuming the galley and cleaning it after dinner. And it would, you all got your turns to do it. And when I'm vacuuming, this lady's just standing there staring at me. And I'm like, vacuuming? And I'm like, okay, it's kind of getting weird now. And I'm like, hey, can I help you? She's like, I've just never seen a man vacuum before. And this is like a 50-year-old woman. And I'm just like, whoa.
Wow.
Okay, now you have, like, get out, because it's creeping me out. Jack's upstairs.
There's a bunch of memes floating around like that. It's like how to turn your wife on, and it's a guy doing like remedial chores like that, like vacuuming or sweeping or doing dishes. It gets me every time. I gotta stop and like look at what he's doing. I'm like, that's fucking hilarious. You're not wrong.
So I it's there's always going to be that part, I think, of it, I guess, in certain households, right? I mean, if I go to my household, we're still very, as you would say, stereotypical, where, my wife's a stay-at-home mother. She cooks and cleans. Doesn't mean I won't, right? But I'm out, 10, 11, 12 hours out of the day, sometimes out working, and I come home and it's like, okay, well, I got home, today, right? I got home at 9:00. Obviously, I had not cooked dinner, right, and things like that, or was not going shopping with my son. So you're always going to have that, those households. But then it could be the other ways around, where obviously it's, the wife is the one working and it's a stay-at-home dad. I just think it's an inbred thing in men that they feel like we need to, and just, have that. Even if you are a stay-at-home dad, you're probably sitting there, all right, how can I make money somehow? Right? Or
Yeah, I got a buddy who
Yeah.
struggles with that. He's going through that at the moment.
Yeah.
He's really struggling with it.
Yeah,
He's
I
like, he
think
just
that's
feels
how we were made, right? Like, it's,
Yeah.
you feel like you need to do that, even if you don't need to. You should have that feeling. You have that, inner.
it's just an innate drive in you that you want to provide. Like, you can't ignore it.
Well, it's drive, and I would even say that some of it's probably peer pressure, right? You got friends looking at you that are like, man, how can this guy stay at home and his wife's out working? And
Not a judgment on it.
it's I'm sure that's probably some heavy ass peer pressure, especially depending on who your circle of friends is and
No
whatnot.
problem being a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, some people can't get over that hump, though, right? Like, you can either look at it as you are being a provider, right? You're providing that service to your family. You're looking after things at home, your kids, whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can't imagine trying to get over that hurdle because I agree. It's something that's kind of ingrained in you, and maybe it'll start shifting generations of dads past us, because like we kind of discussed, it's moving away from, dad's dad and mom's mom to more a cohesive parenting, whatever the hell you want to call it, a 50-50 share of the load. And so maybe it is going that way.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think it should go that way. I just hate to see it when stuff like Luke said, where they're like, wait, what, you're a dad, you shouldn't be doing that, or good for you,
Yeah. Here's
way to go.
a lollipop.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Condescending.
Well, and I think, we had pretty much a 50-50 thing, but I think if we had the option, we would have probably both chosen for her to stay home, to be a stay-at-home mom. But just, we ran the numbers and all that stuff. It just didn't work out. And so we made it work at that point. And that's when it did become a 50-50 thing, right? I mean, I had friends that gave me grief because, even getting up at night with the kids, right? She had to get up to go to work the next day, just like I did. So we ended up having a thing where she'd take like 2 nights, and she'd get up if the kids got up in the middle of the night, and then I could sleep through the night, and then the next couple of days I did the same thing, right? So that it was more of a 50-50 split as far as the issues and dealing with the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And I think a big chunk of it too is, I mean, you look at the economy now, it's a lot more likely that you're going to see 2 working parents that have to split the load than you are still a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still possible, but with the cost of groceries, daycare, all that, I mean, it doesn't foot the bill anymore just to try and offset those costs with having a parent stay at home.
Well,
So,
it's tough because, like you guys, you just brought it up before, we were talking about, right? All the people in the daycare that both your kids go to are still women, right? So even if both parents are working full time, the people that are still taking care of the kids are the women, just now in a daycare setting, right? It's still right. So like, even if you got out of it in your own household, they're getting taken care of by a female most of the time, and not that it's like if you had a guy working there. Like, I know my wife worked in a daycare for a while, and there was the one guy that worked there, and he was a teacher. Now he worked with a little bit older children, like the 3.5, 4-year-olds, but he was going to be a teacher, but he was the only male teacher, and he was kind of left out a little bit of the group, right? Because now he was the male, and I'm sure there was some teachers that were, okay, this is a little bit weird, right? Where it's not weird if a mother takes the boy, a girl takes the boy to the bathroom, but it's weird if he took a girl to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't allowed to. He wasn't allowed to. So there's always going to be those issues. There's always going to be those conflicts, and I don't know.
I feel it like I wouldn't want to do taking my little girl to the bathroom.
Yeah. Either would I, and I, but I wouldn't have a problem. Like, if I don't know, it's weird. It's an interesting. You know, like
It just
like your brother had to help with your daughter. Like, you might be like, oh no, whatever, it's my brother, right?
I'd
But if
kind
it's
of enjoy it if my brother did it because I don't think he'd be scared shit.
I think at the end of the day, it just drives me batshit crazy that people have to be so up in your business. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the internet where everybody puts their lives out there on display, right? You got the people that want to post, everything they did between the time they woke up and they went to bed. You got the people that want to post that. You got the overshares on Facebook. And I think that's just leading to nosy people that lead to comments like Luke got or like I got. Like, why the fuck does it even matter?
Yeah.
Like, is my kid doing terrible at daycare? Is that why you're asking me? Or are you just asking me because it's outside the social norm for
They want to daycare. That's why.
That's what really kind of grinds my gears on the kind of gender standard roles for parenting. It's just that people they refuse to just stay in their lane with shit.
Mm-hmm.
And just let you parent, let you do what you want to do. But yeah, I was gonna say on that note, guys, I think we touched on some good topics on dadding hard as hell tonight. So hopefully some of those hit home for you guys, give you a little bit of food for thought, maybe on kind of how you want your roles to look in your household and with your kids. But thanks for sticking out with us. This is a little bit longer episode, but we appreciate you guys joining us. Please like, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know some topics you want us to possibly talk out in the next episode, and check out the Facebook group. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Later.
Later.